thank you so much for being here today. I'll get right into it. Look, my name is Derrick Anderson. I'm the Republican nominee for Congress in Virginia's 7th Congressional District. I'm from here in Spotsylvania County.
Yay!
I grew up here. My mom owned a few small businesses here in the area growing up. I always joke with folks, if you ever went by the whistle stop, I'll just name one of them because everyone always comes up to me afterwards and says, Derrick, which ones did your mom own? So Whistle Stop was one of them, and I was the kid in the back flipping burgers, mopping floors. Is my mom here right now? Where's she? Mom, hey! I should whack you. But no, I grew up here in Spotsylvania. I went to Virginia Tech on an ROTC scholarship and had the opportunity to go I had the opportunity to earn an ROTC scholarship and end up being the first in my family to graduate from college before joining the Army. I started off as an infantry officer, earned my Ranger tab, then went to Iraq for 15 months as part of the surge. I then went up to Arlington National Cemetery, where I was with the Honor Guard. I did about 150 funerals there in Arlington National Cemetery before becoming a Green Beret. I did 5 deployments with the Green Berets. I was in Bahrain, Lebanon, Israel, Jordan, and Afghanistan. Before getting out and going to law school and clerking for 2 federal judges. So I'm here today to accept 6 debates and forums across the 7th Congressional District and challenge my opponent, Vindman, to do the same. The people of the 7th, my home, the place that raised me, deserve to hear from both candidates in a thoughtful discussion of the issues, not once, not just in TV ads or on social media, but multiple times across the district. From the western side of the district, like Culpeper, NAACP debate, and across well over 3/4 of the district with our local ABC station. Anything less is a disservice to this district. Recently, a poll came out that shows that this race is in a dead heat. The voters of this district are smart, they're thoughtful, and they'll be looking at who can make their lives better than what they were yesterday. I'm committed to making the futures of each person's lives here in the 7th District better, safer, more affordable, and prosperous. That's my pledge to each of you. I'll fight every day to support policies that make groceries cheaper, rents more affordable, and gas a reasonable price. I'll advocate immediately for a balanced budget amendment because if Congress cannot balance the budget and stop this out-of-control spending that has sent inflation into record highs, then they shouldn't get paid until they do. I will secure the border and make sure that we have high walls and wide gates. Our district is made up of hard-working immigrants who came here legally, but the spike in illegal immigration has led to taxpayer-funded services and support being diverted to those who are not citizens. The border crisis is leading to a rise in crime along I-95, a spike in fentanyl, killing 5 Virginians a day. We're seeing it right here, even in our western portion of our district, like Greene County, where Sheriff Smith, in the last few months, for example, just made a large fentanyl bust here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, seizing several hundred pills of fentanyl. Our roads, like I-95, need the infrastructure support that helps move thousands of people in the 7th to and from work. And our farmers need policies that make sure their everyday costs for materials and equipment do not make their jobs for feeding Virginians harder than they already are. At the end of the day, it's time to put people over politics. That's what Congress owes this nation. And that's what I, as a member of Congress, owe the people of this district. Now, my opponent, Vindman, seems to be more focused on his past, while I'm focused on your future. He is running a revenge tour against Donald J. Trump and his political opponents, not a campaign for the people here in the 7th Congressional District. He supports the policies of the current Biden-Harris administration that have led to record high inflation, everyday life being too expensive, illegal border crossings at record levels, and an America that our enemies no longer fear due to weak and delayed decisions empowering them to attack American service members and our allies overseas. My opponent, Vindman, owes answers to the people of the 7th. Like, why is he lying about his military rank and embellishing his time in combat? I will never denigrate the service of any American willing to serve their country, and I am grateful for Yevgeny's service. However, if he's willing to lie and mislead about his military service, What else will he lie to the people of the 7th Congressional District about?
Right.
How can we trust him? Recently, multiple complaints have been filed against his campaign for very questionable coordination with a political group that has spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in advertising supporting his campaign and paid the nonprofit he and his brother started. The people of the 7th deserve answers. Answers to the lies mentioned above and his plan for the future to better their lives, make them more affordable, safer, and more secure, rather than continuing to focus on the past. During this race, you'll hear a lot of ideas thrown around, see plenty of misleading TV commercials, and hear lies and exaggerations thrown around by my opponent. But I will work every day and travel to every corner of this district, the district that raised me and shaped me into the man I am today, and tell them about the plans to better their lives. But again, my opponent will continue to focus on his failures and the past. So with that being said, I think we're going to take some questions, and I cannot tell you all again how much it means for everyone to be here today, including the press. Thank you all for being here. So with that, Riley,
It's time for a couple questions, folks.
because we got to get back to in the district.
Do you have anything?
Yeah, so just a few minutes ago, Vindman accused you of either committing voter fraud or tax fraud. Do you have any response to that?
Yeah, so this is the fear-mongering that Yevgeny Vindman continues to do. I've been completely above board on all the things that he's accusing me of. This is the first I've heard of it, but again, this is what he does. He hides behind Twitter and social media rather than doing things like this. That's why we're asking for debates. We're asking for 6 debates for him to come to events like this and answer tough questions like that. But no, we've been above board on everything that I've done. I'm from here in Spotsylvania County. I live here in Spotsylvania County. I went to Cortland High School, for those of you who want to know that. My mom, again, had Whistle Stop. She had a gas station off of Princess Anne Street and Bumper Sports Bar. So that's who I am, and that's where I'm from.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
So about the military record embellishment, that's obviously been a hot topic in this election, both on the presidential level and here. Have you been asked to provide records of your own military service to kind of clear the air on any questions that may evolve around you? And would you ask Mr. Vindman to do the same?
Sure, and I'd be open with that. Yeah, you're talking about DD-214's military records. Yeah, that's fine. I would have no issues providing those. Again, I'm very open. I wear my military record on my sleeve. As an infantryman, we have knuckles that are bare from dragging them on the ground and running around Iraq and Afghanistan. We have veterans in the room. I'm seeing a few here right now, but I have no problem. I've been always very open and honest about my military record. I was an infantryman, and then I was a Green Beret, so happy to provide that. And I'm happy to probably provide a few of my buddies that will give you some funny stories about me while we were overseas. So.
Nick, you have a question for you on crime. Well, you answered most of my questions earlier.
Yeah, but then you get to hear it, Nick.
We didn't get into crime as much, but you mentioned it. Is there something any legislation you would support at the federal level that would stop the flow of fentanyl coming into Northern Virginia communities, for instance? What would you like to do specifically to address crime?
Yeah, first and foremost, we got to stop what's going on at the border right now, right? We have millions upon millions, over 9-10 million illegal immigrants that have come into this country. Look, and I'll be frank. So I've been speaking with a lot of our law enforcement, our sheriff's offices throughout the communities. Each sheriff's office obviously has certain issues that are unique to each county, but as a district, I'm hearing the same thing over and over again. The criminal activity that's happening on I-95 because of our open border is real. In Stafford County, we're seeing vehicles being dumped with weapons, with drugs that are being just dumped there. It not only takes time and resources away from our law enforcement that are trying to protect our local communities. I mentioned in my discussion about the Greene County Sheriff, where they just did a bust a few months ago, where they found several hundred pills of fentanyl in Greene County, Virginia. We see in Prince William County, it's disheartening to see, but every 3 or 4 weeks you see a Twitter post or a social media post. Thank goodness that our law enforcement is out there doing what they're doing, finding guns, drugs, and thousands of fentanyl pills. The fentanyl overdose crisis is real. Like I said, 5 Virginians a day are dying from fentanyl overdoses. And in fact, I asked one sheriff in one of our more rural counties, I said, what's the #1 thing that you're dealing with? And the first thing he said were overdoses. So we've got to stop the bleeding that's going on at the border right now, because fentanyl is coming in from droves, and we know it's affecting us here in the district, not only from a community safety, not only from the aspect of with the fentanyl poisoning that we see going on, but from a national security perspective. You know, we just saw a few weeks ago up at Marine Corps Base Quantico, we had 2 illegal immigrants attempt to breach the front gate on Marine Corps Base Quantico, Jordanian descent, posing as Amazon drivers. Those 2 individuals have been released, and we don't know who they are, who they're tied to. And as a military guy, as somebody, you know, who knows intelligence a little bit, those are simple questions that we should be given as a public of why those individuals are here in this country. Thank you.
Go for it.
Following up on your last talk about Quantico, what we found out during the news that had happened is that there's almost no communication or transparency from the federal agencies that are investigating that. So what can we do to make sure that we improve the channels of communication, not only between the federal agencies and the governor, but to the mainstream American people? How do we improve that?
Yeah, and I think that's why having someone from the district is very important, because, for instance, the chairman of the Board of Supervisors here at Spotsylvania County, Jake Lane, I'll give him a shout out. We went to middle school together. Jake Lane has my phone number. He will call me, and he has been very, very open about calling me and asking me questions about where I stand on things and what I'm doing. I make it very personal, because this is my home district, my home county, about making sure that I have very, very fluid conversations with local officials, because as we all talk about, all politics are local. If things are happening at the federal level, they're ultimately going to impact us here at the local level. So it's very important for us to have that open dialogue. And I do think it's important too. Congress has the power of the purse. They have the ability to drag people up in front of Congress and ask hard questions about, our border policy, about what happened at Marine Corps Base Quantico. And I think it's important that that dialogue is had. Additionally, I think it's also important that my opponent answer some of these questions, right? I think that's why it's important that we're offering these 6 debates for him to come and have these discussions and conversations, not only with the media, but the people here in the 7th District. And that's the important part of this, is making sure that our neighbors, the people in our community, local business owners that are feeling the heat right now, they get to ask those tough questions, and not only me, but also my opponent.
Yesterday was the 3rd anniversary of the Afghanistan withdrawal. President Biden was in Rehoboth. Vice President Harris had no public events on her schedule on that day. What does that mean to you as a former Green Beret, former service member, and what would you do to ensure that a tragedy like that doesn't happen ever again?
Accountability. Comes down to accountability. I lost 5 of my guys in Afghanistan. That day is a mixed day of emotion for me. Because that's what got me into doing this. That's what got me into running. When I saw that withdrawal in Afghanistan, I'll be very frank, a Gold Star mom, one of my guys that was killed, called me and said, my son died in Afghanistan. We did 20 years of war, and this is what we have to pay for it. It's a mixed bag of emotions. It's anger, it's sadness. It's also, especially what we saw, I think, about last week, when we saw Kabul, and the Taliban was marching down the street of Kabul with our military weapons, our equipment, our aircraft, millions of dollars of equipment that's been left over there. So again, this goes back to accountability. This comes back to being strong on the international community. We've seen the Biden-Harris administration, how they've handled our national security, whether it be Israel, whether we saw the withdrawal in Afghanistan. The withdrawal in Afghanistan was the single event, I believe, in the Biden-Harris administration that led to all of the trickle-down effect of all of the things we see from an international stand. Whether it be Israel, and we saw that Hamas came over on October 7th and killed all of those Israelis and took hostages. We just saw one hostage released, I believe, today. Not released, that the Israeli forces went and got. We see what's going on, and we see the Biden-Harris administration's equivocation on their support to Israel while they're in the middle of a war right now. And so when you do that, your enemies become emboldened. Iran becomes emboldened. That's why Iran can say, over the last 2 weeks, every day they say, we're going to attack Israel. They say it over and over again, while at the same time you have Hezbollah in the north firing into the northern part of Israel and piercing the Iron Dome. So again, it comes down to being strong, from an international standpoint, from a national security and a foreign policy standpoint, so that our enemies aren't emboldened to do the things that they do, because that's what's going on right now.
A follow-up, if that's okay. Do you believe Kamala Harris can be trusted on Israel? Do you think she will continue to ignore the radical voices in her own party? During the DNC, she came out very pro-Israel and said that that's kind of her record, is always standing by Israel. But do you think that'll continue to be the case if she is the next president?
Well, I think it's interesting. You know, we saw what she said at the DNC convention, but we also saw what she said directly after that, right? Look, as someone who was in Iraq and Afghanistan, I don't want war. Nobody wants war. It's terrible. That's why we have thousands of service members that are not here today because of war. No one wants them. But at the end of the day, Israel has an absolute right to defend itself. When those people, Hamas terrorists, came across the border and slaughtered thousands of Israelis, it was horrendous. And so when you sit there and you equivocate, this goes back to it, when you equivocate on your stance, especially when it comes to Israel and on the national security, our enemies are watching and they will exploit it. And that's exactly what happened. And that's why, again, we see Iran. And I'll take it back, too. Since October 7th, we've seen over 100 attacks on our military installations overseas. In fact, I have Green Beret friends that were on some of those military installations that are suffering from TBI and post-traumatic stress disorder because of the attacks. Those kamikaze drones, those Iranian-backed organizations, flew into our military installations. Again, that's what you get when you equivocate and when you have a failed foreign policy.
Thanks.
Thank you all.